Right. I need people to argue with, but before people show up, I might as well go over the Roosevelt Institute analysis of modeling the macroeconomic effects of universal basic income. Alright, executive summary. How would a massive federal spending program like universal basic income, UBI, affect the macro economy? We'll use the Levi Institute to estimate the impact of 3 versions of such an unconditional cash assistance program over an 8-year time horizon. You know what? This needs to be on the fucking screen as I'm doing this. So hold on. This needs to be on the goddamn screen. So we're gonna jump over here. And I'm just gonna add a browser source. Add a window capture. Call it Yang. There it is. Alright, make it readable. Okay. Alright. I could cut out the gray space, we don't need that. I don't think we need that. Just a little bit of it, whatever. The impact of 3 versions of such an unconditional cash assistance program over an 8-year time horizon. Overall, we find that the economy can not only withstand large increases in federal spending, but could also grow, thanks to the stimulative effects of cash transfers on the economy. We examined 3 versions of unconditional cash transfers: $1,000 a month to all adults, $500 a month to all adults, and a $250 a month child allowance. For each of the 3 versions, we model the macroeconomic effects of these transfers using 2 different financing plans: increasing the federal debt, or fully funding the increased spending with increased taxes on households, and compare the effects to the whatever model's baseline growth rate forecast. Our findings include the following. Alright. Paying for it by increasing the federal debt would grow the economy. See, I actually don't totally understand how this all works with the federal debt, increasing the debt and growing the economy by some, you know, GDP. expands the economy by 12.5% over the baseline after 8 years. After 8 years of enactment, the stimulative effects of the program dissipate and the GDP growth returns to the baseline forecast, but the level of output remains permanently higher. I feel like there's many things I don't understand. When paying for the policy by increasing taxes on households, no effect on the economy. Right, okay. Adapted to include distributional effects. Extra dollar in the hands of a lower income household leads to higher spending. In other words, the households that pay more in taxes than their receiving cash assistance have a lower propensity to consume. Those that receive more in assistance than they pay in taxes have a higher propensity to consume. Thus, even when the policy is tax rather than debt financed, there's an increase in output, employment, prices, and wages. Keynesian model. Keynesian? 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 Fuck. Okay. Keynesian, Keynesian. Policy of universal unconditional cash assistance (UBI) would essentially be the extreme poverty. Well, yes. The labor market is proving less reliable as a source of support than it once was, especially for low-wage workers. Okay. Yeah. Household balance sheets as a driver of macroeconomic outcomes. The whole aim of the policy is to render households more financially secure. Therefore, a model that incorporates the financial security of households into macroeconomic outcomes is critical. Constructing and updating its model for many years in order to provide factual predictions about the macroeconomy by comparing its forecasts with realized outcomes. The approach taken in this paper forecasts the macro 8 years in the future when current policy is constant. This is baseline forecast for purposes. Okay. Policy counterfactuals related to enacting UBI at different sizes and target populations for the 8-year prediction for the macroeconomy. Given the policy counterfactuals to the baseline forecast, we report that the difference in key macroeconomic and labor market indicators between the counterfactuals and the baseline is the effect of UBI. Purely macro model. It contains aggregate economic actors and treats them as individuals. For example, the household sector is one large household, the corporate sector is one large firm, and the government is one unitary organization that conducts both fiscal and monetary policy. This is standard in macroeconomics literature, but it's not necessarily well suited to study the effects of UBI on the macroeconomy, because a UBI inherently affects the distribution of income among households. The distribution of income matters. The distribution of income among households. If the distribution of income matters for macroeconomic outcomes, and there is reason to think that it does, yeah, that makes sense to me. I think that definitely makes sense to me. That a policy like UBI that alters the distribution of income among households needs to be interpreted in light of a distributional model in order to forecast its macroeconomic effect. Okay? We thus modify the basic model with adjustments for heterogeneity in income taxes paid and in propensity to consume across households, both of which we show are relevant. Yeah, okay. Just basically having differing households with different income taxes paid and different amounts of consumption. Enacting UBI and paying for it by increasing the federal debt would be expansionary because it would increase aggregate demand. When the policy is first enacted, economic growth is higher than in the baseline as the economy converges to a larger size. Within 8 years, growth returns. The larger the size UBI, the larger the increase in aggregate demand, and thus, the larger the resulting economy is. The individual macroeconomic indicators are qualitatively, but one would predict given an increase in aggregate demand, in addition to the increase in output, employment, labor force participation, prices and wages all go up. Since the policy is deficit financed, increase the government's liabilities because of the stimulative effects of the policy, that increases the debt in less than it would be if the policy did not increase aggregate demand. When paying for the policy, fuck, now I want to look at, someone had a question, I want to look up another thing now. It's, so I'm trying to look up value-added tax. A consumption tax is a tax on the purchase of a good or service like sales tax, tariffs, excise, and other taxes on consumed goods and services. A value-added tax is a consumption tax placed on a product. Wait, hold on. Let me just drag this one on there too. Whenever value is added at each stage, whenever value is added at each stage of the supply chain, from production to the point of sale. Whenever value is added at each stage of the supply chain, the amount of VAT the user pays is on the cost of the product. Less the cost of materials used in the product that have already been taxed. Advocates say it raises government revenues without punishing success or wealth, as income taxes do, but it is also simpler and more standardized than a traditional sales tax. There are fewer compliance issues. Critics charge that a VAT is essentially a regressive tax that places an increased economic strain on lower income taxpayers and has bureaucratic burdens for business. Value-added taxation is based on a taxpayer's consumption rather than his income. In contrast to a progressive income tax, which levies greater taxes on higher level earners, VAT applies equally at every purchase. On the gross margin at each point in the manufacturing, distribution, sales process of an item, the tax is assessed and collected at each stage, in contrast to sales tax. Well, if you think you can talk to me riding on lightning, then please come talk to me. Otherwise, shut the fuck up and let's all learn something. There you go, bigger. Dulce is an expensive candy manufactured and sold in the country of Alexia. Alexia is a 10% value-added tax. Okay, that's like exactly what is being proposed here. So, the manufacturer buys the raw materials for $2. Plus a value-added tax of 20 cents. Payable to the government of Alexia for a total price of $2.20. Manufacturer sells dulse to a retailer for $5 plus 50 cents for a total of $5.50. Or the manufacturer renders only 30 cents. In Alexia, sorry, wait. The manufacturer renders only 30 cents to Alexia, which is the total VAT at this point, minus the prior VAT charged by the raw material supplier. Note the 30 cents also equals 10%. The manufacturer's gross margin of $3. Finally, the retailer sells dulse to customers, or I don't know if it's Dewice or dulse, whatever. Or sorry, to consumers for $10. Plus a VAT of 1 for a total of 11. The retailer renders 50 cents to Alexia, which is the total VAT at this point, $1, minus the prior 50-cent VAT charge for the manufacturer. The 50 cents also represents 10% of the retailer's gross margin on dulse. Dulce? Sorry, I don't know what the fuck. So So when you're buying, when you are purchasing, there is tax that you pay on top of the purchase that goes to the government. And then you sell. Wait, sorry, I need to take my time on this. I'm trying to get a whole feel for all of this. This is, so someone has raw materials, they sell the raw materials for $2. I guess it's like, I'm thinking about like, well, let me read this thing about sales tax. At what point the money is paid and by whom? Farmer sells wheat to a baker for 30 cents. The baker pays 33 cents the purchaser pays the VAT. The purchaser pays the VAT. Which the farmer sends to the government. Okay, so it's like when there is a transaction, the purchaser pays a little bit more, and that little bit more goes to the government. The baker uses the wheat to make bread, sells the loaf to this local supermarket for 70 cents. The supermarket pays 77 cents, but the baker only sends 4 cents to the government because the other 3 were paid by the farmer. Finally, the supermarket sells the loaf of bread to a customer for $1. The customer pays $1.10. Sends 3 cents to the government. $10 sales tax. As with the traditional 10%, the government receives 10 cents on a $1 sale. The VAT differs and is paid at different stops along the supply chain. The farmer pays 3 cents, the baker 4 cents, and the supermarket 3 cents. However, VAT offers advantages over a national sales tax. It is much easier to track the exact tax levied. Is that how you pronounce that? At each step the production is known. With the sales tax, the entire amount is rendered after the sale, making it difficult to allocate to specific production stages. Additionally, because the VAT only taxes each value addition and not the sale of a product itself, assurance is provided that the same product is not double taxed. The United States remains the only notable exception. Any state that switches to VAT initially feels the negative impact of reduced tax revenues despite its greater revenue potential down the road. VAT has earned a negative connotation in some parts of the world where it's been introduced, even hurting its proponents politically. In the Philippines, voted out of office by the electorate when he ran for re-election. But in the years that followed its implementation, the population eventually accepted the tax. Huge cuts in the VAT rates. VAT in the US, there's much debate about replacing current income tax system with the federal VAT. At the time, clear that a VAT would only add 150 billion in additional revenue, more or less than 3%. If you adjust over 250 billion, 3%. All the outside impacts, VAT would change the structure of production in the United States. Not all firms will equally be able to absorb the hike in input costs. It is unknown if the additional revenue would be used as an excuse to borrow more money, historically proven to be the case in Europe, or reduce taxes in other areas. Principal findings: VAT would reduce retail spending by 2.5 trillion, we would lose 850,000 jobs. Significant redistributional effects that could harm current workers. Greatly simplify the tax code. Make it more difficult to avoid paying taxes. Collect revenue on all goods sold, including online purchases. Ever so close tax loopholes, internet companies which and their customers. Unpaid tax on online sales cost states billions. VAT supplants the American income tax. It eliminates the disincentive to succeed complaint levied against such progressive tax systems. Citizens get to keep more of the money they make and are only affected by taxes when purchasing goods. This change not only confers a stronger incentive to earn, also encourages saving and discourages frivolous spending. Opponents, however, note many potential drawbacks, including increased costs for business owners throughout the chain of production. Because VAT is calculated at every step of the sales process, bookkeeping alone results in a bigger burden for a company, which then passes on the additional cost to the consumer. It becomes more complex when transactions are not merely local but international. In different countries, different interpretations. Simpler to maintain, costlier to implement. Tax evasion can still continue. It causes great conflicts. Consumers typically wind up paying higher prices of VAT, while the VAT theoretically spreads the tax burden on the value added of a good in the supply chain. Thus, in practice, the increased costs are typically passed along to the consumer. Even so, the better off consumers could ultimately benefit. If a VAT replaced the income tax, as with other flat taxes, VAT's impact would be felt less by the wealthy, shouldered more heavily by the poor, who spend a larger percentage of their take-home pay on necessities. In short, lower-income consumers would pay a much higher proportion of their earnings in taxes to the VAT system. Wait, so okay, so we got the Roosevelt report, we got Investopedia, and then we need to get this up here too. Okay, so let's like look into this here, because I know that Roosevelt Institute. See, there's this, right? Let's go through all this. Jump in that discussion right now. Wait, hold on. A form of social security that guarantees a certain amount of money to every citizen. Yes. President is a Democrat in 2020 on the platform of universal-based income. I could probably zoom this in, huh? Okay. Automation already destroyed 4 million manufacturing jobs. Marks from the world now project that a third of all working manufacturing jobs. Current policy is not equipped to handle it. Workers. Stopping most. Yeah. Yes. Simple value-added tax would guarantee that all Americans benefit from automation, not just big companies. Provide money to cover the basics for Americans, while enabling us to look for a better job, start our own business, go back to school, take care of loved ones, work for the next opportunity. Yep. Okay, how would we pay for it? Consolidating some and implementing value-added tax at 10%. Current welfare and social program beneficiaries would be given a choice between their current benefits for and cash and unconditionally. Most would prefer the cash with no restriction. Value-added tax, the tax on the production of goods or services a business produces. It is a fair tax and it makes it much harder for large corporations who are experts at hiding profits and income to avoid paying their fair share of VAT. It's nothing new. 160 out of 193 countries in the world already have value-added tax or something similar, including all of Europe. Income will come from 4 sources. Current spending. We currently spend between 500 and 600 billion a year on welfare programs, food stamps, disability, and the like. This reduces the cost of universal basic income because people are already receiving benefits, would have a choice, but would be ineligible to receive the full 1,000 in addition to current benefits. Right. A VAT. Our economy is now incredibly vast at 19 trillion, up 4 trillion in the last 10 years alone. VAT at half the European level would generate 800 billion in new revenue. VAT will become more and more important as technology improves because you cannot collect income tax from robots or software. New revenue. Money in the hands of American consumers will grow the economy. The Roosevelt Institute projected that the economy would grow by approximately 2.5 trillion and create 4.6 million new jobs. This would generate approximately 500 to 600 billion in new revenue. Economic growth and activity. Our economy spend over $1 trillion on healthcare, incarceration, homelessness services, and the like. We would save 100 to 200 billion as people take better care of themselves. Yeah. Yeah, housing inflation.
Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. One of the central elements of my campaign is the freedom dividend, where every American receives $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from new technologies. I believe so strongly in the power of the freedom dividend to improve tens of millions of Americans' lives that I'm personally going to give one New Hampshire resident $1,000 a month every month in 2019. If you know someone who would benefit from receiving $1,000 a month, please do nominate them on the website below. Let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts humanity first. New Hampshire, I will see you on the campaign trail.
That's not the... Here, hold on. Here's the actual fucking video, alright. Like, here it is.
We are experiencing the greatest technological and economic shift in human history. We need a way to help millions of Americans transition through this period, and a universal basic income is the best and most efficient way to do that. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. I believe I have the right vision, priorities, and values to improve the lives of millions of Americans. 7 years ago, I started Venture for America to train hundreds of young entrepreneurs to build businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, and other communities across the country. Together, we helped create thousands of jobs. But during this time, I came to realize that technology has already wiped out 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states. And it's about to do the same thing to people who work in retail, food service and food prep, customer service, transportation, as well as industries like insurance, accounting, medicine, and law. I saw so much over the last number of years traveling this country. What I experienced was an eye-opener to me, where I would walk through abandoned neighborhoods and boarded up businesses. I have 2 young boys, and I'm deeply concerned about the future that they're going to grow up in. If we don't change things dramatically, they're going to grow up in a country with fewer and fewer opportunities, and a handful of companies and individuals reaping the gains from new technologies, while the rest of us struggle to find opportunities and eventually lose our jobs. And it doesn't need to be that way. Under my plan, every American adult will receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from automation. If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business, and really have their head up as they plan for the future. With your help, we can make universal basic income a reality. Join us and let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts people first. We are experiencing the greatest technological and economic shift in human history. We need a way to help millions of Americans transition through this period, and a universal basic income is the best and most efficient way to do that. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. I believe I have the right vision, priorities, and values to improve the lives of millions of Americans. 7 years ago, I started Venture for America to train hundreds of young entrepreneurs to build businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, and other communities across the country. Together, we helped create thousands of jobs. But during this time, I came to realize that technology has already wiped out 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states. And it's about to do the same thing to people who work in retail, food service and food prep, customer service, transportation, as well as industries like insurance, accounting, medicine, and law. I saw so much over the last number of years traveling this country. What I experienced was an eye-opener to me, where I would walk through abandoned neighborhoods and boarded up businesses. I have 2 young boys, and I'm deeply concerned about the future that they're going to grow up in. If we don't change things dramatically, they're going to grow up in a country with fewer and fewer opportunities, and a handful of companies and individuals reaping the gains from new technologies, while the rest of us struggle to find opportunities and eventually lose our jobs. And it doesn't need to be that way. Under my plan, every American adult will receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from automation. If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business, and really have their head up as they plan for the future. With your help, we can make universal basic income a reality. Join us, and let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts people first. A friend has a sister on disability, and he told me this heartbreaking story about how she actually won't even volunteer because she's afraid she'll be seen as able-bodied and then lose her disability benefits. If you look at the national churn rate for disability programs around the country, the churn rate, or the rate at which people get off of disability, is literally 0. No one ever gets off disability because no one's ever going to give up a lifetime of cash benefits for a part-time job that could disappear. So that's what we have to get rid of. We have to get rid of any kind of negative incentive for flourishing, really. Like, that person should, like my friend's sister, should obviously volunteer and do whatever she wants. And so if we can free up the money from these paternalistic restrictions, and in my view, most any restriction we put on it would end up having various perverse results over time. So I'm more on the unconditional, but there are ways you could tailor it. Yeah.
What's the cost of administering this program? Is it more bureaucracy that's going to have a high cost? Or
so the great thing is, if you really did just make it unconditional cash. So Andy Stern, my new friend and advisor, the former head of the SEIU, says the government is terrible at many, many things, but it is excellent at sending large numbers of checks to large numbers of people promptly and reliably. And the administration behind that is very, very low, especially if you were to make it non-means tested, because you don't have to police people. You don't have these offices they have to show up every month and say, I'm like, still poor, I'm still looking for work. So the administration actually goes way, way down if you truly make it universal. Right now we're spending tens of billions on administration in many of these programs, and hopefully that would go down over time. In terms of the opiates, oh my gosh, I feel so strongly about this. It is criminal what has happened to America, because we've prescribed hundreds of millions of opiate prescriptions to Americans when they didn't need it. And there was one company in particular that made a lot of money off of that, Purdue Pharma. It made tens of billions. They're now the 16th richest family in the country, the Sackler family. They have buildings at Harvard and Yale named after them, because all you need is a lot of money to get shit named after you now. And they have created this modern day plague that we're now dealing with. So you had these opiates, and they literally marketed it being as like non-addictive wonder drug. It's awesome. And then when people were like, actually, it's terribly addictive, and people are starting to get super addicted, and now they've moved on to heroin, and they're starting to just die of heroin. Like right now, as we're here together, 7 Americans die of drug overdoses. 7 Americans die of drug overdoses every hour in this country. This is like a plague.
it's gotten so bad that it's reducing our life expectancy. And this is something that the federal government, in my opinion, caused through their delinquency and negligence, where the FDA was like, sure, prescribe opiates to everybody. That'll be great. There's a stat in one of that came out where there were something like 280 million opiate prescriptions in a country of 320 million people. I mean, it's like every man, woman, and child needed like an opiate prescription. So the federal government fell asleep at the switch and have helped unleash this plague of rampant capitalism that is killing our citizens. And so then when you look at that and say, okay, that means it's the federal government's responsibility to fund treatment and help fix this thing. And if the feds want to get stingy, as president, like I would go to the Sackler family and say, guys, you have a choice. You can either fund the treatment of this plague you have unleashed on our country to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, and I will bring you in, put my arm around you, and say thank you for trying to undo this mess you created and profited from, or I will make your lives a living hell. We will just have daily protests around all of the buildings that have your shit name on it, and we'll just like vandalize the crap out of anything with a Sackler name, and it'll be a good time. Like, those are your choices, And so we'll get some of the money back, but the money that we can get back from the Sacklers is not going to be enough to fund treatment around the country. So I'm going to quadruple treatment, and I'm going to make a non-addictive drug substitute called buprenorphine freely available to everyone. Everyone who can prescribe opiates can now prescribe buprenorphine for free, paid for by the federal government. And the French government implemented this, and it reduced heroin overdoses by 80% in, I believe it was 5 years.
So one thing I do want to mention is that a universal basic income, how many people here think it seems like fantastic or far out or too good to be true? It's okay, you can raise your hand, it's cool. So the thing that most people don't realize is that it actually passed the House of Representatives in 1971 under Richard Nixon. Martin Luther King was for it. 1,000 economists signed a letter saying this would be great for the economy and society. The Roosevelt Institute projected that a universal basic income would grow the economy by $2.5 trillion or 13% and create 4.5 million new jobs because people would have more money to spend. So it's actually a very pro-growth measure. And if you had a Democratic-leaning Congress, or even a mixed Congress, because some Republicans and Libertarians love this plan, then you could get it through. Yes, Brian?
In decades.
And President Trump's success as an outsider could embolden even more non-traditional candidates to run. NBC 10 Boston's Jonathan Cho has an exclusive sit-down interview with one of them making his case at a fundraiser this evening in the Bay State.
It's just one.
Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden have all been mentioned as potential Democratic candidates running for president in 2020.
We are doing a fundraising event here in Boston.
Then there's Andrew Yang.
One of my friends said the opposite of Donald Trump is a smart Asian guy who actually cares about facts and information.
And he's now the first Asian American Democrat ever to run for the Oval Office. Today he's campaigning in Boston and trying to bring attention to this. Automation and artificial intelligence that's already here in factories, retail, and expected to take over industries like fast food and trucking.
We're going to automate away millions of American jobs.
Yang says businesses are not prepared for the rise of robots and the potential social fallout.
So if you think that you can displace them with robot trucks and there will not be riots, you're actually fooling yourself.
Wait, you believe there are going to be potential riots from people losing their jobs?
Inevitably.
So to avoid that, Yang is pushing the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month given to every American adult.
If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business.
Funded by taxing businesses benefiting the most from automation.
It's pie in the sky.
Economist Barry Bluestone is a skeptic.
And we really don't have the financial wherewithal in this country to do that.
Yang is 43 years old, married with 2 kids, and based in New York. He's a successful entrepreneur with ties to New England, graduating from Phillips Exeter and Brown University.
Andrew Yang's going to be a player. I'm not at all convinced he's going to be the Democratic standard bearer.
But right now, historian Heather Richardson says anything is possible.
It is completely a free-for-all. Starting line is so muddy right now because of the chaos in Washington.
From Boston, Jonathan Cho, NBC 10 Boston.
Jonathan, thank you. Governor Baker welcomed the president of Portugal to the State House. The Portuguese president there.
Healthcare crisis in America.
Oh my gosh, is there?
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
And how you would address that?
So I think our healthcare system and our educational systems are both two of the biggest problems plaguing the well-being of Americans. We spend 18% of our GDP on healthcare to lesser results than other countries. Because our healthcare system rewards activity as opposed to output or healthfulness. It's just like how much you do and then we'll just pay you more, and we end up creating these perverse incentives for healthcare providers. So I believe we need to move to Medicare for all, and the way I would do that would be to lower the eligibility age over time, over an extended period of time, and then go to a single payer system and try and negotiate lower prices, because right now we spend about twice as much as we need to on many things. It requires a massive overhaul of the healthcare system. But that's the direction we should go in, and especially now, because as people don't get jobs with benefits and jobs with healthcare coverage, then an employment-based system makes less and less sense.
Sort of a general question. You come across as a much different type of candidate, both because you have very bold, different ideas, but also the way you were describing like a hypothetical State of the Union address where you actually have goals listed and progress towards them versus sort of just
a bizarre theater performance is what I call them now.
Do you think that will be advantageous to you, and how do you sort of plan on capitalizing on that or softening people who don't like that sort of difference?
I think it's a huge advantage. I was with Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn, and he was talking about how if any CEO did that State of the Union stuff that the presidents are doing, they'd be like fired the next day, because it's just bizarre and unproductive. So the hope is that we can get America focused on results and facts and deliverables and executive functioning and move the government in that direction very, very quickly. I believe it's a huge plus. I am an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs don't like Donald Trump because we consider him sort of a fake bullshit entrepreneur. He's more like a charlatan marketing guy. He doesn't build teams. He doesn't build quality organizations. So hopefully we can give people some of what they mistakenly voted for with Trump in terms of like a genuine builder and someone who wants to do things in an apolitical way. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
So I met a guy named Andy Stern who used to run the largest labor union in the US. And he said the future of labor is no labor, we're screwed, and we need to move to universal basic income. So I said, wow, it's not just the tech bros, it's also the largest labor union leader of our generation. So I sat with him, and his signature's up on the wall. He's now a supporter of the campaign. And so in part because of Andy, I became convinced that we need to move to universal basic income, which I have rebranded the freedom dividend because conservatives like it better than anything else you call it. Liberals like it no matter what you call it. But conservatives dislike it unless the word freedom is in it. So the freedom dividend tests great with everybody.
What your take is on what the equation of the campaign's goals become, say, if somebody else were to completely co-opt all your ideas, whether that's a Sanders or a Gillibrand or somebody. Say they're just like, Andrew Yang is so smart, I want to do everything he wants to do. Like, what does the campaign become then?
Then I'd be psyched. I'm just trying to solve problems, I don't really care about my own political future. So if Bernie Sanders were to take universal basic income, new measurements for the economy, and a digital social currency, and a bunch of other stuff, then I'd be like, Bernie, you're old, but hopefully we can make this happen and get over the finish line. Because I'm just trying to keep this country together for my kids.
If you don't mind, Susan.
My question is just around prices. So I think the idea is brilliant, but what would prevent major corporations from just saying, okay, everybody has an extra $1,000 a month, so we're just going to raise our prices accordingly and eat the benefit of universal basic income, like raising the cost of a hamburger at McDonald's or a landlord raising the cost of rent? How do you...
So the best economic models that people have come up with to measure what would happen if we gave everyone $1,000 a month,
project that the economy would grow by $2.5 trillion or 13% because people would have more money to spend, and would create about 4.5 million new jobs because Main Street businesses would benefit. Those models also suggest that there would be very, very limited erosion of buying power based upon inflation because there's still competition between firms. Just because we all have a tiny bit more money to spend doesn't mean that, like, if I raise the price of hamburgers or whatnot and the other person's cheaper, like, we're still going to be price sensitive. So their models had a very limited erosion in purchasing power of less than 10%. And the economic benefits would be vast and clear, would be enormous.
So Andrew Yang, let's see. How tech is causing the imminent job apocalypse and what you can do to help. And what's the name of the book?
The name of the book is The War on Normal People.
Wait a second, hang on a second. And you are?
I'm Andrew Yang, running for president 2020 as a Democrat.
2020. Make sure to remember his name. He's here at Televised 2018.
Excellent, man. Oh, we gotta make it real. We gotta make it real.
Guys, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it.
We loved your talk. We want to grab a selfie with you.
Oh yeah, really, man. Let's do it. Love it. We're getting to the tribe. We're oh, civic. Complete collusion with like everyone pricing the same thing. There's still this competition between firms. It's not going to eat it up to that degree. The other thing is, like, you know, if you had $1,000 a month, maybe you think like, hey, I can go someplace cheaper. Of course. Like I might be able to leave. Like my wife's excited that people might be able to leave the hyper expensive places, go someplace where two little boys who are 5 and 2. I'm going to do all I can to make sure that this is still a country they're excited to grow up in. We need to completely reorient the economy in this direction.
I'm like so with you, like all the way. I really want to selfie with you.
Oh yeah, please. No problem, man. Good to be here.
Meeting with you. Hopefully when I'm old enough, I'll be able to vote for you.
Oh, you're old enough now.
I'm in high school.
Oh, really? You'll be old enough by 2020.
Exactly. I'll be there.
And so will you.
Yeah,
2020. To me, economics drives everything else. Like, you can't denounce hatred or fix people's spirits without trying to remedy the conditions that are causing the problems in the first place. Technology is directly responsible for Trump's election, but not in the way most people think. We automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, essentially his margin for victory. That's why he's our president today. It's driving the political and social dysfunction, and we're about to do the same thing to truck drivers, retail workers, call center workers, cashiers, fast food workers. I have many friends in Silicon Valley, and the more they know, the more concerned they are, the more confident they are that artificial intelligence is quickly getting to a point where it's going to transform industries.
Lock in their power.
Well, 59% of Americans today cannot pay an unexpected $500 bill. To me, there's a mindset of scarcity that has taken hold over the majority of the country, and the only way to combat that is by making it so they can pay a $500 bill. And so we have to, right now, in my mind, scarcity is winning about 60-40 in this country, and we need to invert that. We need to get it back to a mindset of abundance. I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs around the country, and we know that many of you here in this room resemble this. Entrepreneurship is born of a mindset of possibility and abundance and optimism about the future, and that's out of reach for more and more Americans. It's unrealistic, and we have to make it realistic again. It all starts there.
So, Andrew,
thank you. Yang2020.com.
Yeah. Basic income, Bernie Sanders just introduced that legislation. So are you running to the left of him?
Well, so what I've seen, and I agree with Bernie Sanders on many of the central diagnoses of the problems. As much as I'm for the fact that no American should work and still be suffering in poverty, The reality is if we were to elevate a minimum wage to $15, it would just hasten the automation of many of these jobs. Fast food, for example, pays about $8 an hour. If you push that to $15, you're going to see a total wipeout of fast food workers because the public company CEOs will take that as their big catalyst to jettison many, many workers. So we need to skip the middleman and just put money directly into the hands of American citizens. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. One of the central elements of my campaign is the freedom dividend, where every American receives $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from new technologies. I believe so strongly in the power of the freedom dividend to improve tens of millions of Americans' lives that I am personally going to give one New Hampshire resident $1,000 a month every month in 2019. If you know someone who would benefit from receiving $1,000 a month, please do nominate them on the website below. Let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts humanity first. New Hampshire, I will see you on the campaign trail. We are experiencing the greatest technological and economic shift in human history. We need a way to help millions of Americans transition through this period, and a universal basic income is the best and most efficient way to do that. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. I believe I have the right vision, priorities, and values to improve the lives of millions of Americans. 7 years ago, I started Venture for America to train hundreds of young entrepreneurs to build businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, and other communities across the country. Together, we helped create thousands of jobs. But during this time, I came to realize that technology has already wiped out 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states. And it's about to do the same thing to people who work in retail, food service and food prep, customer service, transportation, as well as industries like insurance, accounting, medicine, and law. I saw so much over the last number of years traveling this country. What I experienced was an eye-opener to me, where I would walk through abandoned neighborhoods and boarded up businesses. I have 2 young boys, and I'm deeply concerned about the future that they're going to grow up in. If we don't change things dramatically, they're going to grow up in a country with fewer and fewer opportunities, and a handful of companies and individuals reaping the gains from new technologies while the rest of us struggle to find opportunities and eventually lose our jobs. And it doesn't need to be that way. Under my plan, every American adult will receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from automation. If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business, and really have their head up as they plan for the future. With your help, we can make universal basic income a reality. Join us and let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts people first.
Alright, what's up everyone? What's up? So, who's voting Yang 2020? Press 1 in the chat if you're voting Yang 2020. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. He has an entire list of issues, of policies. If you would like me to go through the policy list, if you're interested in that, we can look over that. Alright, so, wait, can I zoom out a little? There we go. Alright. So, if you want to know anything, there's a whole bunch of things here, like, it's got it all listed. It's all right here. Yep. Every single one of these things you're seeing is a URL that goes to a whole page of information. There's a ton of things, there's a ton of information. Yeah, I'll just like slowly scroll from the top if you want to look at them. Sorry, let me get this going. There we go. Drop a link, yes. Yes. Andrew Yang, running for president in 2020, President of the United States of America, on a platform of universal basic income to smooth the effects of the automation of labor towards the future of society. Okay, since people seem to bring this one up. Brief. Puerto Rico has been part of the United States for over a century, and yet its people are still denied many of the rights of full citizens because it is a commonwealth of the US instead of a full state. Puerto Ricans overwhelmingly want to be a state, and we should endorse this and make it happen. Puerto Rico should be a state. They function as one right now without the political rights and bankruptcy protection. If Puerto Ricans look like Swedes, they'd be a state already. We must not only offer them political equality, but help them rebuild their economy and infrastructure. It will take time, but that's what Americans do. Problems to be solved. Puerto Rico has been part of the US for over a century, but has never been granted the full rights of statehood. Goals: make Puerto Rico a state. As president, I will take all steps necessary to promote Puerto Rican statehood as an overdue step towards equality, if this is what Puerto Ricans want. Where was that? Where are we? Okay. Well, it seems no one wants to actually talk to me. So I might actually temporarily end the stream because I have to go run an errand. I gotta go run an errand, so like maybe we could have actual conversation in like an hour or so, or maybe just like 40 minutes or something. I gotta be back in a little bit. I have to do something, so because no one is okay, I need to pick up my testosterone blockers, okay? I gotta, well, not technically block, well, yeah, I need to pick up the thing that lowers my testosterone, okay? So I gotta go do that, because I'm out of it. So I need to make sure I have low T, okay? So I gotta go do that, come back, okay? And then we can maybe have a conversation, okay? Alright, I'll go do that. I'll be back, and then if anyone wants to fight me, because everyone's cowardly, everyone's such a coward. If anyone wants to fight me, we can do that after I get back, after I lower my T, okay? Alright, I'll see you then. Alright, peace.